Worldwide, AGA, reporting live from Cape Canaveral, MK, Big Sight, let's ride. Back in time.
Week 1 has come and gone, and we are now on to week 2. Man, week 1 was just beautiful, wasn't it? A great slate of games all day long. If you're anything like me, you watched until 1 a.m. until Utah and UCLA were done playing. But it was beautiful. And now we got to talk about week 2. And my guess is that this show will either incite a riot or it'll make you think to yourself, what do I really know about these teams? I'm banking on the fact that it's probably going to incite a riot. And if you are a dear friend of mine, I encourage you to please stick up for me if I happen to ruffle some feathers, which I imagine I am probably going to, because it was rough for some teams in week 1. But then on the other note, there were some teams that, okay, maybe I had them a little underrated. So I'm going to go through all of that with you. I have Big Ten win-loss predictions like I promised, because I was not able to do it last week. I'm going to lead the show with that. I also have win-loss predictions for the SEC. I have a fresh, new PK poll for week 2, hot off the press. And I'm going to give a quick preview of some of the week 2 games that I'm looking forward to most. Usually I like to make my predictions for games on Wednesday, but due to me not being able to give you Big Ten and SEC win-loss predictions, I'm going to lead the show with that. And then the next episode, which I will get to you by Friday, we'll have my Game 2 picks and previews. Going to go really in-depth on that, so make sure that you are subscribed, first of all, to the Air Raid with Parker Kelley, which can be found on the Game Nashville Sports Network podcast. You subscribe to that, you'll get every episode of the Air Raid with Parker Kelley. And also, please follow me on the socials at Parker_Kelley10. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. Maybe look into getting a TikTok once this thing gets rolling a little bit more. We are in midseason form, as some have said, but let's blow this thing up. Please subscribe. Please follow me up on the socials, and we'll see where this thing can go. I have really high hopes. Okay, Big Ten win-loss predictions. And I'm going in no particular order. Actually, I'm going in alphabetical order, as I did with the Big 12 and as I did with the ACC. Okay, starting up first, I have Illinois. The Illinois Fighting Illini, a team that has high expectations for potentially being a dark horse playoff team. I have the benefit of the doubt on this because all of these teams have already played, so we have a 1-game sample size, so it kind of is cheating, but also I wasn't able to get this episode to you last week, so give me some grace. Okay, Illinois did win their week 1 game against Western Illinois. Shocker. They won 52-3, and now week 2, they're traveling south to take on a Duke team who has a new quarterback in Darian Mensah, who's year 2 under Manny Diaz. I have Illinois going 9-3. Now, as I look at their schedule, I think this Duke game can be tricky because Manny Diaz defenses are always very good. And on the other side, I am a hardcore believer in Darian Mensah, who is their quarterback. I look at that Indiana game that Illinois will have to go on the road for. That is on September 20th. The next week, they're at home, and they have USC coming into town. I think there's a good chance that USC will be undefeated by this point. I think that is one of the most under-talked about games, USC and Illinois. That is going to be a good game. I'm looking at the Ohio State matchup. They get them at home, so that is a huge benefit to the benefit of the doubt. That is on October 11th. They have a bye week, which is going to be good for them because they have to hit the road and go all the way to the West Coast to take on Washington, who Washington is also a dark horse team for the Big Ten. And those are really the 4 games that 5 games that Illinois I could see either losing or struggling to pull out a win. That back half of the schedule, not too difficult. So I don't really, they have Rutgers, Maryland, Wisconsin, Northwestern, 3 of those games are at home. Only one of them is on the road, and that is the Wisconsin game. I don't think Wisconsin will be very good this year. I have Illinois going 9-3, which if they go 9-3, they're probably on the outside looking in of the playoffs. Okay, let's look at Indiana. Indiana, I believe they're ranked number 23 in the latest AP poll. I'm not sure, and you'll find out when I release my PK poll. We'll have to see where Indiana is ranked, or if maybe they're not ranked. I don't think Indiana's going to be as good as they were last year, even though I think they upgraded at the quarterback position with Fernando Mendoza, who is a little bit more talented than Curtis Rourke was, especially in the eyes of NFL scouts. I have Indiana going 8-4. They have a significantly tougher schedule, not out of conference, but in conference. They have a significantly tougher schedule than they did last year. They have Illinois. I believe that is week 4. They get Illinois at home. The next 2 games, they are on the road at Iowa, and we know what Iowa can be like at night. Don't know if that's going to be a night game, but if it is, watch out. They have a bye week after the Iowa game, but then they have to hit the road and go to Oregon. I think that is going to be tough. So if you look at that 3-game stretch, Illinois, at Iowa, at Oregon. Their next game is going to be a back at home versus Michigan State. Don't think Michigan State is going to be a world beater this year. However, I think they can be better than people expect. And then their third to last game, which would be on November 8th, they are on the road at Penn State. So the Illinois, the Iowa game, Oregon, and Penn State, all 4 of those games concern me for Indiana. And I think 8-4 is probably a safe bet for Indiana this year. Still a good team, but I don't see them being as good as they were last year. Let's talk about Iowa. Iowa is a big game this week at Iowa State, the Cy-Hawk game. One of the most underrated rivalries in the sport. I personally really love this game. Let's look at Iowa. They got a transfer portal quarterback by the name of Mark Gronowski, transfer from South Dakota State, which is a powerhouse at the FCS level. Iowa has not had a good offense. They've had a great defense, but they have not had a good offense. Tim Lester, their OC, came over from the Green Bay Packers last season was his first year. I believe they upgraded at the quarterback position. I believe Mark Gronowski is going to be good for Iowa this year. However, there are some games on this schedule that make me scratch my head. The first of which being this week at Iowa State. I think Iowa State is a really good team. They have Indiana in there, as I just said, but they get Indiana at home. That game is September 27th. They have Penn State. That game is also at home, October 18th. They have Oregon. That game is also at home. So while, yes, Iowa does have some tough games, they get them at home. And home field advantage at Iowa is certainly something not to be scoffed at. After the Oregon game, they go to USC. And I'm going to get to USC here in a second, but I think USC is going to surprise some people. I think that is going to be a tough one. And then obviously Nebraska, their big rival. They end the season at Nebraska. Nebraska, also we got to remember, year 3 for Matt Rule teams, there's a significant jump. So I see Iowa going 8-4. I think that's pretty safe to say as well. Maryland, not going to spend too much time on them. I don't think Maryland's going to be good this year. I have them going 5-7 or 4-8, but I'm leaning towards 5-7 right now. Michigan State, I said, could surprise people. Year 2 under Jonathan Smith, their quarterback Aiden Childs, who followed Jonathan Smith from Oregon State to Michigan State. They have a wide receiver by the name of Nick Marsh. I think that he is one of the most underrated receivers in the country. I have Michigan State going 7-5. How about Michigan? Michigan was very one-dimensional last year on offense. They basically could not throw a forward pass, so what did they have to rely on? The run game and playing good defense. Well, Michigan has a tough game coming up as they have to go down to Norman, an SEC Big Ten matchup. That is the alma mater for head coach Sharon Moore. and that is the game before Sharon Moore begins his 3-game suspension. He will be suspended for 2 games this year in the first game of 2026. So at Oklahoma, that's going to be a tough game. Week 4, they're also going to be without Sharon Moore. That is on the road at Nebraska. That's going to be a tough one. Let's go to October 11th. That is when a lot of good games are happening. If you haven't looked at October 11th already, shame on you. They're going to be on the road at USC. The following week, they get Washington at home. The next week, they're at Michigan State. And then, obviously, they end their season with Ohio State, and that game will be in the Big House. So if you're looking at the Oklahoma game, Nebraska, USC, Washington, Ohio State, I see them losing 3 of those games. I'm not going to say which ones because I want to save the anticipation. I want to build up a little suspense. But I think Michigan's going to go 9-3, which would also have them, considering their schedule, on the outside looking in of the playoff. I think Michigan is going to be a 2026 team. I think they'll take a step forward this year, but 2026 is when we're really going to see Michigan blossom. Minnesota, I think Minnesota is an under-the-radar team. I have them going 7-5. What about Nebraska? Remember, the year 3 Matt Rule, that is a real thing. Now, we did see Nebraska play. They did struggle a little bit versus Cincinnati, but they ultimately pulled that one out, which I think is a significant improvement for Nebraska because Nebraska has been just horrendous in one-score games, especially late. Let's look at Nebraska's schedule. I think it's pretty manageable. They host Michigan week 4. They host USC on November 1st. November 1st, also a great date for college football. They're at Penn State, the second to last game of the season. And then they host Iowa to end it all off. 4 games, I could see Nebraska going 9-3. Maybe even 10-2. And if they went 10-2, my gut tells me that they would be a playoff team. A playoff team, maybe like a 10 or 11 or a 12 seed, but who knows? I think Nebraska would go 9-3, which would be great for them in that program and certainly set them up for success in 2026. I see Nebraska going 9-3, but do not be surprised if they go 10-2. Northwestern, I think Northwestern is going to be the worst team in the Big Ten. I have them going 2-10. Ohio State, we saw what they just did to Texas in week 1. I've been going back and forth on Ohio State because I did not predict them to be in my Big Ten championship game, but I'm starting to think about that because they were clearly the best team, in my opinion, in week 1, but I don't have them predicted in my Big Ten championship game. I'm going to say that Ohio State goes 10-2. And the reason I say that is Julian Sayin was not great on Saturday versus Texas. The defense was. At some point, being the quarterback at Ohio State, you're going to have to win a game for them. Will Julian Sayin be able to do that? I'm sure he will, but will he be able to do it every game? I have Ohio State going 10-2. That, to me, is pretty safe. I still have Ohio State in my playoff, so there's nothing to worry about there. Okay, let's go on to Oregon. Oregon I have in my college football playoff. I actually have them, I could see them advancing very far. I think I had them losing in the quarterfinal round, but I could easily see them going to the semis. I have Oregon at 11-1 and playing Penn State in my Big Ten championship. They play at Penn State in week 5 on October 27th. I think they will lose that game, not to spoil anything. But they will meet again in the Big Ten championship, at least I believe. They're also on the road at Iowa on November 8th. I think that's going to be a tough one. Their last 2 games, at home versus USC, then on the road at Washington. I think they win 3 of those. I see Oregon going 11-1. Penn State, I also have going 11-1 because they're in my Big Ten championship game. Let's go to Purdue. Purdue, I think they're going to be bottom of the conference. I have them going 3-9. Rutgers, I don't have a lot of hope for Rutgers under Greg Schiano, at least for this year. I have them going 5-7. What about UCLA? We saw UCLA on Saturday night, or at least I did. I know a lot of Vols fans were watching because they were hate watching a specific individual. UCLA did not look good versus Utah. And just looking at their schedule, I don't think it's too workable for them, at least right now. They have a lot of question marks, and I have UCLA going 4-8. Let's go to USC. USC, they're an interesting team because Lincoln Riley, there have been some conversations when games are not being played this spring and throughout the winter. I think USC will take a significant step forward. I have USC going 9-3. Looking at the games that could be slip-ups, they're at Illinois. Again, I'm going to talk about that game a lot. They have a bye week, and then they host Michigan. The next week, they're at Notre Dame, and then they're at Nebraska on November 1st. That is a tough 4-game stretch. They also have Iowa at home, and then they're at Oregon. And yet I still have USC going 9-3 because I have a belief that Lincoln Riley is going to get the most out of their quarterback, Jaden Maiava. I think they're going to take strides defensively. Again, I could see USC being a very good defensive team in 2026. Maybe not this year, but I think they'll take strides defensively. Washington, 8-4. Washington's a dark horse. I'm just telling you right now. Jed Fish, if you remember, he was at Arizona. He had Arizona winning, I believe it was 7 straight. They went 10-3. They beat Oklahoma in the Alamo Bowl. They have a quarterback by the name of Damon Williams. Way early on, when I first started the show, I did a top 10 under-the-radar quarterbacks. He was on it. Watch out for him. I have Washington going 8-4. Wisconsin's not going to be very good. They have the hardest schedule in the Big Ten by far. It's really not even close. I have Wisconsin going 4-8, and it kills me to say that because I want Luke Fickell to win, and I just do not see they just go and look at their schedule. I'll read it for you real quick so you kind of have an idea of what they're working with. They're at Alabama on September 13th. They're at Michigan. They host Iowa. They host Ohio State. They're at Oregon. They host Washington. They're at Indiana. They host Illinois. All those games, this is by far the toughest schedule in the Big Ten. So I have Wisconsin going 4-8. Okay, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to do the same thing with the SEC. It might ruffle some feathers. Make sure you're staying tuned for that. You're listening to The Air Raid with Parker Kelley on ESPN 102.5 The Game. I just want to let that one play for a little bit. Nostalgia at its finest. Even though the SEC is no longer being played on CBS, may the memories live forever in our hearts. I'm getting ready to preview the SEC. I'm going to give you some SEC win-loss predictions, and I'm sure this will go over well. Okay, so I have the benefit of hindsight a little bit on this because I've seen a 1-game sample size of these teams. Starting with Alabama, things were not pretty. We've had some callers on the station this week that are not happy with Kalen DeBoer, and understandably so. I stupidly predicted Alabama to win the national championship. If you listen to my prediction episode, I can confidently say that I no longer think Alabama will win the national championship. I could be wrong, but I highly doubt it. So shame on you if you listened to me originally, because I'm having second thoughts. Okay, Alabama. This one is going to be tough. This one's going to be tough to say. Just looking at Alabama's schedule and the way they performed against Florida State in Week 1, I believe that this Alabama team is going to be similar to what it was last year, hot and cold. You don't necessarily know which Alabama team that you're going to get. And for that reason, I have Alabama going 8-4. They have ULM. I hope you win that one. That is coming up this week in Week 2. They have Wisconsin in Week 3, and then they go to Georgia. Georgia hasn't lost a home game in, it seems like, 39 years. So I think they start the season 2-2 there. They have Vanderbilt. They're on the road at Missouri. They have Tennessee. They're on the road at South Carolina. They have LSU and Oklahoma, both of which are at home, and then they end the season at Auburn. I don't see a world right now in which Alabama doesn't finish the season 9-3 or 8-4. I think Alabama's going to go 8-4. And if Alabama goes 8-4, they would regress a game from last year. Kalen DeBoer, probably out of there. So I have Alabama going 8-4. Arkansas. I think Arkansas has a really good quarterback in Taylon Green. I don't know about the talent around Taylon Green. I have Arkansas going 6-6, which would get them to a bowl game. Sam Pittman, I don't know if he's still going to be there after this year. I love Sam Pittman. I personally hope that he is. But Arkansas fans, I'm sure, want to win a little bit more than what they're doing right now. So I have Arkansas going 6-6. Auburn, man, they look good versus Baylor, at least running the football. Is that concept, is that play style going to be sustainable if it's just ground and pound? You got to have a little bit of aerial attack, especially if you're playing in the SEC. Auburn has a tough schedule. They're at Oklahoma in week 4. They're on the road at Texas A&M in week 5. They have a bye week, and then they get Georgia. That game will be at home. They're at Vanderbilt. They, of course, host Alabama. If Auburn goes 8-4, I wouldn't be shocked, but I have Auburn going 7-5, at least for right now. That could very well change. Florida. Let's talk about Florida. Let me tell you something about Florida. I'm going to make this quick because I kind of went a little long on the last one. If DJ Lagway is healthy for Florida, despite having the number 1 rated strength of schedule in the country, DJ Lagway did not lose a game as the starter last year. He did start the Georgia game, but he exited with injury, and Florida actually was winning against Georgia until DJ Lagway went out. So I don't know if I'll count that loss on him. But other than that game, DJ Lagway was undefeated as the starter for Florida last year. If DJ Lagway is healthy, Florida's in the playoff. Simple as that. If Florida goes 9-3, I think they get to the playoff. I have Florida going 9-3. We'll see. We'll see, because as of right now, I did not have Florida in my original playoff. I had Oklahoma as my dark horse from the SEC getting in there. I'm going to get to Oklahoma in just a second, but let's move on to Georgia. Georgia looked really good in week 1, but it was against Marshall. So let's pump the brakes just a little bit. Georgia, they have Austin Peay this week, whoever that is. No, I'm just kidding. I know who Austin Peay is. But then they get Tennessee in week 3, and that is on the road in Knoxville. Josh Heupel is yet to beat Georgia as the head coach for Tennessee. They have Alabama in there. They're on the road at Auburn. They host Ole Miss. They have the neutral site against Florida. They host Texas, and then they have the neutral site versus Georgia Tech. I have Georgia going 10-2, which I believe would put them right back in the SEC championship game, definitely in contention. Kentucky struggled against Toledo, but Toledo is projected to be one of the better group of 5 teams, but still, you're Kentucky, you're an SEC school. You shouldn't struggle that bad, but they did. Kentucky's going to go 3-9 this year. I think them and Mississippi State, bottom of the SEC. Let's talk about LSU, a team that really impressed. LSU, I predicted to be my SEC champion, and I feel really good about LSU, especially after seeing how their defense performed against Clemson, a team that was very explosive on offense. Lest us not forget that Clemson was a top 20 team in terms of scoring last season, and LSU held them to 10 points. LSU, if they have a defense to complement that explosive offense, LSU, I could definitely see going 11-1, winning the SEC championship, making a deep run in the college football playoff. LSU is a national championship contender. That is for sure. They have Florida in week 3, but they're hosting Florida. They have to go to Ole Miss. They host South Carolina. They're on the road at Vanderbilt. They host Texas A&M. They go to Tuscaloosa on November 8th, and then they end the season at Oklahoma. I have LSU going 11-1. I'm very confident in LSU. I like the fact that they get to host Florida and South Carolina. I don't love that they have to go on the road to Oklahoma, and I don't love that they have to go on the road to Alabama and Ole Miss, but I still think they will, if you can win in Death Valley, or the Clemson's version of Death Valley, I'm not sure which one is the real one at this point, but since LSU beat Clemson, then I'd say they have the real Death Valley. I think LSU can win most of those road games, and I see LSU going 11-1 this year. Mississippi State, not going to spend too much time on them. I think they go 3-9, right there with Kentucky for bottom of the SEC. Missouri, I really like their performance in week 1 on offense. However, it was against Central Arkansas. I believe Missouri, they put up, 61 points, which was really good. Bo Pribula looked really, really good, the transfer from Penn State. I think Missouri goes, I don't see them being as good as they were last year. I feel like they had some really good, they had a really good defense, had some really good pieces along the offensive line. Brady Cook, Luther Burden, all those people are gone. They still have some good pieces, and they have a very workable schedule. However, I see Missouri taking a step back because someone is going to have to do that in the SEC, and I see Missouri going 8-4. Let's move on to the next team on our list, the Oklahoma Sooners, which I told you I was going to get to. Oklahoma, I have them in my playoff. I really am high on John Mateer. I think he's going to win the Heisman Trophy this season. I don't think enough people watched him last year, so you probably don't know a whole lot about John Mateer, but we're going to find out very quickly because they get Michigan, who is going to be a very, very good defense. They get Michigan at their place in week 2. They have a tough schedule as well because they have the Red River Shootout versus Texas on October 11th. They have to go to South Carolina. They have to go to Tennessee. They have to go to Alabama, and then they get to host Missouri and LSU. And I see 3 losses in there for Oklahoma, and I think 9-3 would be good enough to get them in the college football playoff. Who knows? Maybe we see Oklahoma and Florida in the college football playoff. Could you imagine a world in which that happens? Moving on, we got South Carolina. South Carolina, I've said many times on this show, and I could be wrong, but I don't think South Carolina is going to make the college football playoff this year. Not because I don't believe in guys like Lenore Sellers, because, man, that dude is just, every time I watch him, just reminds me how good he is, and he looked really good against Virginia Tech. I just think I have concerns about the surrounding pieces. Nick Harbor, are we going to see him reach his full potential this year? We know the freak athlete he is, but how is he going to be catching the football? He had 2 drops against Virginia Tech. That concerns me. Dylan Stewart, we know what he is. But who else is there on the defensive side of the ball to complement Dylan Stewart? I have questions along the offensive line. What happens when rubber meets the road and you get to matchups like on the road at LSU, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, A&M, Clemson, Bama? What's going to happen in those games? I have South Carolina going 9-3 on the outside looking into the college football playoff. Once again, I think they kind of stay stagnant to where they were last year. Tennessee, let's talk about Tennessee. Tennessee looked real good against Syracuse on week 1. Joey Aguilar, I think he opened a lot of people's eyes. Now, I will say, there are going to be a lot of people out there that are going to be like, it was just Syracuse. Yes, it was just Syracuse. But you go back and you watch that game, you watch some of the highlights, and start fanning yourself a little bit. Ooh, I didn't know Tennessee could, that offensive line, the defense looked just like it did last year. They ran the football well. Some of those freshman wide receivers really stepped up. But they have to go to Florida, which I don't think – I'm trying to get my numbers right. Tennessee has not won on the road in the swamp since the early 2000s. I don't see that changing this year. They get Oklahoma and Georgia both at home. They also have to go on the road to Alabama. Don't remember the last time Tennessee has won on the road in Tuscaloosa, but also we don't know what Alabama is. You could catch them on a hot day. You could catch them on a cold day like the Florida State game. I think Tennessee goes 8-4 this year, but I could see them going 9-3, but I feel solidly right now at 8-4. Texas A&M, they are notorious for, it seems like, being the same team almost every year. I have an infinite amount of faith in Mike Elko, their head coach. But if I'm being honest, and I owe it to the audience to be honest, I'm not sure how I feel about Marcel Reed, because I know the great athlete he is, but what is he as a passer? He has not established himself as an elite passer in college football Yet he may do that, or he may not. But Texas A&M has a tough schedule too, and they struggled a little bit against UTSA. They have to go to Notre Dame in week 3, and then they follow that up with a game versus Auburn. They host Florida. They have to go to Arkansas, and if that game is at night, Arkansas is a very tough place to play. The next week, they go on the road in Death Valley to LSU. They're on the road at Missouri. They have South Carolina, and then they're on the road at Texas. I think Texas A&M goes 8-4 once again this year. And I still believe in Mike Elko, but until I see what kind of passer Marcel Reed is and what he can become, I see Texas A&M going 8-4. Texas, they're already 0-1. They are one of 2 SEC teams that lost this weekend, the other being Alabama, or this past weekend, I should say. So they're 0-1 already, put themselves in a difficult situation. They have to go to Florida, to the Swamp on October 4th, and then they have the Red River Shootout versus Oklahoma. There is a legitimate world in which Texas is 3-3 before Halloween. There's a legitimate world. Now, is it likely? Probably not. But there is a world out there where they go 3-3 before Halloween. They have Vanderbilt, but they get that game at home. They go to Georgia. They do have a bye week in between the Vanderbilt and Georgia games, so that is good. Texas has not beaten Georgia yet as a member of the SEC. They lost to them twice last year, and then obviously they end the season versus Texas A&M. I think Texas does go 9-3 because think about it. You're on the road at Florida. You have Oklahoma. You have Georgia. You have Texas A&M. You're already 0-1, and I see another 2 losses in there somehow, some way, either on the road at Florida, on the road at Georgia, Oklahoma. If you could get 2 out of those 3 and get yourself to 10-2, then I think you're definitely at a good spot for the college football playoff. But will you? I have Texas going 9-3. Let's cap it all off with Vanderbilt. Does Vanderbilt take a step forward? Do they take a step back? I think Vanderbilt is going to take a small step forward. They have a pretty light schedule to start. They beat Charleston Southern 45-3 on Saturday. They're going to go to Virginia Tech, which is not a tough place to play, but I don't think Virginia Tech is going to be a great team this year. They also have to go to South Carolina, but they follow that up with Georgia State and Utah State. So I could see a world in which Vanderbilt starts the season 4-1, but here's where things get difficult. The back half, the last 7 games of their season, they're at Alabama. And not to mention they have a bye week after the Utah State game. So after the bye week, they are at Alabama. They host LSU. They host Missouri. They're at Texas. Back at home versus Auburn. They have another bye week. They host Kentucky, and then they're on the road at Tennessee. 7-5. 7-5 is a slight step forward for Vanderbilt after they went 6-6 last year. I still think Vanderbilt will be competitive in Diego Pavia's, I think it's his final year of eligibility. Are we sure? Are we sure it's his final year of eligibility? I need someone to confirm that with me. I'm not sure. But I think Vanderbilt goes 7-5. So those are my predictions, my win-loss predictions for the SEC. Already did the Big Ten. I will post those to my Twitter so that you have a visual representation. I want to get to what you all have been waiting for, the Week 2 PK poll. That's coming up next on the other side. You're listening to the Air Raid with Parker Kelley on ESPN 1025 The Game. I'm going to need someone to pray for me after I release Week 2 of the PK poll because I'm sure that it is going to be met with a lot of great, nice, understanding comments. I say that sarcastically if you can't tell already. Week 2 of the PK poll is here, fresh off the press, and I'm ready to reveal. Let's go 1 through 25, shall we? All right, starting at number 1, the clear and obvious choice, Ohio State. I thought they had the best performance overall of the weekend, specifically that defense. And if they didn't have the best weekend, the number 2 team on this list might have had that, and that is LSU. I have LSU at number 2. I thought them walking into Clemson's version of Death Valley, or should I say Death Valley, the Clemson version, I thought walking into their building, the way that defense performed, the way the offense made plays when they needed to make plays, I thought it was one of the better, if not best, performances of the weekend. So I have Ohio State and LSU at 1 and 2 respectively. At number 3, I have Penn State. Penn State dropped a spot from last week's PK poll. I had them at number 2. I have them now at number 3 just because I thought Ohio State and LSU, after 1 week, I thought they were the 2 most impressive teams in all of college football. At number 4, I have Georgia. They were very dominant against Marshall. Again, I know that it is Marshall, but I feel really confident that if Georgia can get solid to good to even very good offensive line play, I think that warrants a top 5 spot for Georgia. I have Miami at 5. They were at 10 last week, but I was very impressed with their win against Notre Dame. Specifically, I was impressed with the lines of scrimmage on offense and defense. They really kept Notre Dame in check. I was very impressed with Carson Beck, who a lot of people have been telling me that he's trash and washed up, and people seem to forget that we were talking about Carson Beck being the number 1 overall pick potentially before last season started. He hasn't forgotten how to play football. And as you can tell on Sunday night when he played against Notre Dame, he was operating that offense just fine. So I'm excited to see how Miami does. I believe if they get that offensive line, defensive line combination the way they played, if they get the way Carson Beck played on Sunday night, I believe Miami will be a playoff contender. Number 6, the Oregon Ducks. They moved up 1 spot from week 1's PK poll. Oregon put on a show. Again, they were playing against Montana State, but I still think Oregon has one of the best rosters in all of college football. Now we get to Texas. Texas dropped 6 spots. I had them ranked number 1, as most people did. I do not think the struggles for Arch Manning, and I talked about this on the last episode, I do not think the struggles for Arch Manning will continue at the rate that they did on Saturday against Ohio State, partly because I believe that Ohio State defense is the best defense Arch Manning will face this year. He still has to play Georgia, still has to play Oklahoma. They don't have Matt Patricia running their defense. So I think Ohio State's defense will be the best defense Arch Manning will have faced all year, and I think he'll be able to bounce back nicely. I have South Carolina at 8. Now, this doesn't erase the fact that I still have concerns among the surrounding pieces for Lenore Sellers on offense, around Dylan Stewart on the defensive side of the ball. I thought they played very well against a Virginia Tech team who their defense, for the most part, kept South Carolina in check for about 2.5 quarters. I have South Carolina at 8. Clemson falls 6 spots to number 9. Still think they're a top 10 team. Still think they're very good on all 3 levels of the defense. Still think that they are good, very good in the passing game. I just have concerns about the run game because if they don't have a run game, it'll be hard for Clemson to advance in that college football playoff. I have Notre Dame at 10. I was still impressed with them. Even though they lost the game against Miami, I was still very impressed with Notre Dame. I was impressed with C.J. Carr. I thought his poise in a big-time moment as a true freshman, making his first start, making his first road start, I thought his poise was very impressive. So I have Notre Dame at 10. At number 11, the Oklahoma Sooners. I believe right now I'm higher on Oklahoma than a lot of other people. But that's because I believe in Ben Arbuckle, who's their offensive coordinator. I believe in John Mateer. I believe in the surrounding weapons. I believe in their run game. I believe in the defense. We'll see. They do play Michigan this week. I'm not going to reveal where I have Michigan, but they are coming up. At number 12, I have Arizona State. Love Arizona State. That kind of speaks for itself. Florida at number 13. Florida, I believe the latest AP poll had them ranked at 15, so I'm slightly higher on Florida. They were also ranked 13th in my last PK poll. I believe in this Florida team, if DJ Lagway is healthy, I believe they are a top 15 team definitely if DJ Lagway is healthy, but I believe they can sneak into the top 10 only if DJ Lagway is healthy. I have Illinois at 14. They are also ranked 14th last week. I love the experience. I love the experience specifically they have on the offensive side of the ball with Luke Altmaier at quarterback. paired with that extremely good defense that it seems like they've had under Brett Bielema. I have Illinois at 14, Michigan at 15. So we get a 15 versus 11 matchup if you're looking strictly at the PK poll. I have Michigan at 15. Still want to see how that passing game is with true freshman starting quarterback Bryce Underwood. Still want to know what kind of receivers he'll be throwing the ball to. But again, we will find out on Saturday night. Florida State, 16. They went from unranked in the PK poll to 16 in the snap of a finger. That Alabama win was very impressive. But let me caution you, we still got to see. Florida State could be fooling us. They could have been hot that week one. Who knows? We got to see how things progress. But as of right now, I have Florida State at 16. Alabama's right behind them at 17. They dropped 13 spots. So they fell the furthest out of any team in the PK poll for obvious reasons. Lots of questions, not just with the team, but with the coach as well. Iowa State is at 18. They rose up one spot from 19. Rocco Becht is one of the most under-talked about quarterbacks nationally right now, who I think should be talked about more. I have Ole Miss at 19. Very excited about Ole Miss. I'm very excited about Austin Simmons. Let's see how they are when they face legitimate competition. They play Kentucky this week, so it's an SEC opponent, although I don't expect Kentucky to be very good. We'll see how things look against Kentucky. I have Tennessee at 20, so they rose up 2 spots. It's hard not to love what you saw from Tennessee on Saturday versus Syracuse. Sure, the defense might have given up a couple more scores than they would have liked, but the offense was clicking. Joey Aguilar was operating at a smooth level. So I have Tennessee at 20. I have Texas A&M at 21. They struggled for a majority of the game against UTSA, but I still believe that the talent that they have, especially on the offensive line, I believe the defense under Mike Elko will be good. I believe in that receiving room. I believe in the run game, of course. What about the passing game? We will see. Utah went from unranked to now they're at 22. They absolutely dominated UCLA on Saturday night. Defense was good, holding UCLA to 10 points. The offense scored 43 points. Devin Dampier, he's going to be a star here very soon. So I have Utah at 22. Texas Tech, they fell a couple of spots to 23. I'm still really high on Texas Tech. I'm really interested to see what happens when they start to get into Big 12 play. Georgia Tech is at 24. They fell a couple of spots, or they fell 6 spots from 18 just because they turned the ball over on 3 straight possessions to open the game versus Colorado, but they still won the game. So still some more left to be desired by Georgia Tech, but I have them at 24, and then I have SMU at 25. And they'll have a test because they will take on Baylor this upcoming week, and I will make sure to preview that on my next episode. Okay, I have one final thought to get to, and I would just want to do a very quick preview of some of the games that I'm looking forward to most in week 2. That's coming up next. You're listening to the Air Raid with Parker Kelley on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Wrapping up the show here on the Air Raid with Parker Kelley on ESPN 102.5 The Game. I just want to give a quick, and I mean pretty quick, preview because I don't want to give away too much because the next episode will be a preview and prediction episode. Some of the games that I'm looking forward to watching this weekend. Right off the bat, we got 3 pretty solid 11 o'clock games. We got Illinois at Duke, a non-traditional Power 4 matchup. Really interested to see how that one goes. That is 11 a.m. on ESPN. The Cy-Hawk game, Iowa at Iowa State, a rivalry that's usually played very early on in the season. This will be 11 a.m. on Fox. Big noon kickoff will be there. Really excited for this game, of course. One of the most underrated rivalries in America, if I don't say so myself. Baylor at SMU. That game is also at 11 a.m. on the CW network. I believe this was a Southwest Conference rivalry way back in the day. I applaud these two teams for playing each other in the non-conference. Very excited to talk about that one. Oklahoma State at Oregon. I don't think this is going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a blowout in favor of Oregon. However, it is 2 Power 4 teams that don't typically play each other. So I put it on the list. That is 2:30 p.m. on CBS. Kansas at Missouri, a rivalry that is being brought back. Hopefully these two teams play each other every year because this used to be a big rivalry back in the day. Very excited about this game. That is 2:30 on ESPN2. All these games are Central Time, by the way. USF at Florida. USF had a great showing against Boise State in week 1, and now they get a test as they travel to Gainesville and take on the Florida Gators. That is 3:15 on the SEC network. Michigan at Oklahoma, obviously, in the nightcap. That is the game that everyone is looking forward to most. That is 6:30 on ABC. Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler will have the call. Vanderbilt at Virginia Tech, also the same time on the ACC network. These two teams have a home and home. Vanderbilt won this game week 1 last year in Nashville. Now they're traveling to Blacksburg. Will Vanderbilt have the same result? We'll have to see. And then Arizona State at Mississippi State. Again, I think Arizona State is going to win this game. This is another home and home. These two teams played each other in Tempe last year. Two teams that are just two Power 4 teams that are playing each other. I still think Arizona State will win, but I put it on the list anyway. Okay, I'm going to do a deep dive into all these games on the next episode. So don't worry, just did a quick preview, very, very quick, but I'm going to do a deep dive into all these games in the coming episodes. So make sure that you're subscribed to the Game Nashville Sports Network podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. You'll find every episode of The Air Raid with Parker Kelley there. Also, please make sure you're following me on the socials at Parker_Kelley10 because I'm putting out content left and right. It is that time of year. College football is here. It's the best time of year. And I can't wait to dive into everything with you. It's going to be a great season. Cannot wait. I will have another episode for you Friday. That'll be the preview episode. Until then, take care, God bless, and I'll talk to you then.